say to thee, have mercy, have mercy.
I'm proud to introduce here at the Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling of Tony James podcast, our new sponsor. It's a new sponsor to the podcast, but I've been with this company for a very long time, Jose Sanchez Boots, since 1963. I haven't been with them since 63, but I've been with them since my wrestling career. Every pair of boots that I wear are handmade, custom made. These are not just boots. These are a lifestyle. There's history, the leather working, everything put into these boots means something. In fact, the only time I take these boots off, out of respect, is when I'm in a swimming pool. Anytime, anywhere else, I keep them on. They are that great. You really only need one pair, but after you get one, you need many more. When I step into the ring, when I step out, after the show, wherever I might be stepping, Jose Sanchez boots are on my feet. Check them out. Tell them Outlaw Tony James sent you. Hey, welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling of Tony James podcast. I am Tony James, and as always, that's right, I got the bell of justice. Normally, those of you who have been following us on this podcast, you know I like to do an indie spotlight. I'm going to change things up a bit. First off, I'm very excited because our guest today is JT Hogg. And JT, rather than doing an indie spotlight, I think JT's been very successful on the indie scene. I know when I came on about 8 years ago, I would say JT was probably in the top 5 or 10 indie wrestlers in our area. And so rather than doing a spotlight on somebody, since I have JT here on the phone, we're going to talk about JT as our spotlight and get his feedback and opinion on indie wrestling in general. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you JT Hogg. How you doing, JT?
Oh, not too bad, and I'm definitely better than Chris Pruitt. I'll tell you that right now, right off the bat.
Okay, awesome. Are you referring to something in particular?
No, just overall.
Oh, just overall. Okay. Well, that's a good thing to be a little bit better than Chris Pruitt. When we last saw JT Hogg in the ring, I'd hate to say it, but you and I finally came to terms and shook hands. But to get to that point, that Big Spoon Randy did you in through the command of Kevin Pruitt and his new group. How you feeling after that back in November?
Well, I have to say, I really can't blame Randy too much. He was just kind of learning from me, and that's definitely something I would have done. I think the thing that makes me the maddest is that he was listening to that Kevin Pruitt. And so I'm kind of proud on him on one hand because he did something I would have done. But I'm mad the way he did it because now he's just listening to Kevin Pruitt.
Yes.
What you all listen to.
It's kind of like when your lady breaks up with you. If they upgrade, you're happy. If they don't, then it's kind of salt in the wound, so to speak.
Yeah, he definitely downgraded being with that little group.
I agree. And you're right. He did vintage JT. And that's a great segue into what I want to ask you. The origins of JT Hogg, when I talk to people and tell them my stories of JT Hogg, sometimes they're a little bit shocked because they know you currently and not either watching some of your earlier stuff or getting to know you and hear some of the stories that you've told. So talking about your origin, what first event got you into pro wrestling? What pulled you in?
Well, believe it or not, it was, I think, around 1980, 88, 89. I saw the movie No Holds Barred
Oh,
with Hulk Hogan and Zeus, and I'd been aware of wrestling, but when I saw that movie with my mother, and God bless her, she took me to see that movie probably 4 or 5 times, and watching it now, I have to apologize to her because I enjoyed it then. But I mean, it's nostalgic now, but it's
Right.
not the best movie in the world. Then we went to Value City, and they had the LJN wrestling figures.
Okay.
And I remember I bought Jake the Snake Roberts and Andre the Giant.
Ooh. Do you still have that Jake the Snake?
I do not.
Oh, that those were hard to find even back then.
Yeah, they all had them at the Value City on sale. So
Which Andre did you get?
it was the blue tights,
Did he have the short hair or the long hair?
long hair.
Oh, that's the ugly one.
Yeah, it didn't really look like it.
That's the Series 1 pre-John Studkin Patera.
I thought he looked more like Larry Appleton from Perfect Strangers.
That's a nice reference. Definitely. So you watch No Holds Barred, you get into it. I know currently you're definitely an avid figure collector. So once you got into it and started watching, were you always a WWF guy, or did you get turned on to different territories?
It was mainly all WWFs. At the video store, they had all the WrestleManias and SummerSlams and Survivor Series. They didn't have a lot of the NWA shows. So
Okay.
I was definitely a WWF baby.
So when you started wrestling, who trained you?
Well, I started at Les Thatcher's HWA school.
All right.
And did about 6 months there. Then got injured, couldn't pay for my rent, so I had to come home. And then I went to Crash Holly's wrestling school.
Okay.
And, picked up a little bit of extra training there before he closed down and had the issues he had. But then I actually found my long lost uncle, J.R. Hogg, and
I was going to ask you about that.
he hooked me up and started taking me around, and that's where I met guys like Lord Zoltan and had my first match with Hacksaw and went from there.
Yes, and so I'm glad you mentioned that because I got a couple things I want to ask you about. Some of the big names that I think some people don't realize you've gotten into the ring. And then I got a question about your actual style. But before we get into that, I want to take a quick break. I want to plug my sponsors, and then we'll come right back. This is The Good, the Bad, the Wrestling, a Tony James podcast.
When you think RC, you should think Three Brothers RC. I'm talking 4.9 dual stage anti-foam. I'm talking G13 Pro Direct powered brushless servo. I'm talking Black Jacket, and you guessed it, I'm talking the all-new Yellow Jacket. All your RC needs. That is Three Brothers RC. Check them out on Facebook. You can also get them at threebrothersrc.com. And don't forget the Three Brothers RC fan page. They are the end-all, be-all when it comes to RC. That's Three Brothers RC.
Okay, we're back. This is The Good, the Bad, the Wrestling, a Tony James podcast. If you are following on Spotify, make sure you click the follow button. If you're on YouTube, click the subscribe, leave a comment if you'd like. And as always, you can look me up at Outlaw Tony James on Facebook. So getting back to JT, I had a couple questions. JT was talking about his start, who he trained with, and he talked about his first match with Hacksaw. JT, I got to be honest with you, when I watch some of your old stuff, and then, of course, getting to know you and knowing some different styles and how you create certain styles depending on who you wrestle with, I always kind of thought you were more of an NWA guy. Is that, did I, you know what I'm saying? Like when I watch you wrestle, I always get like an NWA vibe from you. And so knowing that you were specifically a WWF follower, am I off on that?
Well, I think later on I watched a lot of NWA. Like I'm a big fan of like Barry Windham, and I liked Larry Sabisco a lot.
Okay.
So I did watch a lot of NWA later on, but the style I tried to the biggest influence on my wrestling career was probably Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Oh, okay. So you're talking? Are you talking Mid-South Jim Duggan or WWF?
WWF.
Okay.
So that's the one that I think that I probably wrestle. I've always kind of seen myself as a Hacksaw Jim Duggan Doink the Clown hybrid.
Okay. That, and I know you and I have talked before, when we talked about pro wrestlers, we talked about Hogan, about how he's probably one of the few faces that can wrestle dirty and get away with it. And I know wrestling you before, you have a tendency to, even if the crowd loves you, you don't have a problem wrestling dirty. But now that you mention it, Hacksaw kind of did that too, didn't he?
Yeah, he wasn't above cheating a little bit,
Yeah, and I guess it isn't cheating when you're a good guy, right?
I think it's just creative offense.
That's right. So
Hogan definitely influenced me a lot on that, because he used to do like eye pokes and back rakes. And,
yep, absolutely.
So I'm not above doing that, and I think the crowd enjoys seeing the face kind of use the tools of the heel against the heel.
Absolutely. So looking at your origin, and I keep mentioning old matches, do you have anything posted out there that someone could see?
My match with Dusty Rhodes is on YouTube.
Okay. Is it JT Hogg versus Dusty Rhodes?
It's JT Hogg. It starts out as a singles match, and then the tag team GAY came in and attacked us. So then we turned it into a tag team.
To where you sided with Dusty Rhodes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was a face and Dusty was a face, and so he was kind of a little confused on why what was going to happen in our match, and then he kind of came up with that tag team idea.
Okay.
But originally, I guess not to talk too inside baseball, but he when we were going over the match and it was just going to be a singles match, he was going to hit the corner, and I was going to roll him up and pin him for the 3.
Oh.
So, because I was a tri-state champion at the time, NWA tri-state champion.
Okay.
And I don't think Dusty wanted to carry that belt around. So.
And that was the NWA tri-state.
Yes.
Now, was that the true NWA?
Yeah, that was part of the whole NWA affiliates.
Oh, nice.
Rich Arpin was, I think he was vice president of the NWA at one point, and he's the one that ran Tri-State.
Okay. So let me ask you then,
it was official NWA.
Who decided that they were going to have two faces go at it?
Well, I think because originally I was scheduled to wrestle Abyss, and when they, I guess when Dusty got there, he was going up and down, and he recognized my name from my uncle.
Okay.
So that, so I think he just said, he's like, well, I'll wrestle this guy. And Rich knew that I was a good guy to put in with older guys, because I was used to wrestling my uncle and a lot of the older veterans, so I knew how to take care of them. Yeah,
and you can find your uncle's stuff on YouTube, right?
Yeah, his match with like Tojo Yamamoto.
He did a lot of Memphis stuff, correct?
Yes, and AWA and NWA.
Yeah. What did he wrestle under again?
He was J.R. Hogg.
J.R. Hogg, that's right. Okay. So those listening out there, check it out, J.R. Hogg, Memphis, AWA, NWA. And then, of course, you got to check out JT against Dusty Rhodes. JT, you like doing stuff off the second and top rope when you were younger, didn't you?
Yeah, I would do that occasionally.
You were definitely agile for a big man.
Yes, I could throw a mean drop kick.
Mm.
Of course, the last drop kick I threw, I think I cracked my sternum. So I think I'm a little past that now.
Right. I remember I was talking to some of the guys about you when you were younger, and they just looked at me like, "What?" I go, "No, I'm telling you, I've seen some of his stuff. He was mobile. He could do it. Not that you're not mobile now. I don't want to make it sound like you can't move. You're definitely agile in the ring still. But when guys don't know your early stuff, they just assume what they see is what you've always been. And what I like about you is you've been able to transform multiple times, even if it looks like you're wearing the same gear. You've been successful as a heel and a face. And what do you think? Why do you think that is? What makes you successful?
Well, I think one of the main things about the hillbilly, what I've always thought is a lot of guys would come in and, like, if they were doing the hillbilly gimmick, they'd almost do like a parody, and they like made fun of the hillbilly.
Okay.
I always kind of came at it at the angle of, I'm not going to make fun of them, and I'm not going to be a parody. I'm going to be the hillbilly they want to be.
Okay.
So it's like I'm kind of clever. I mean, I may be a country bumpkin, but I'm street smart, like clever.
Yes.
And I never liked, because a lot of times, like, the hillbilly wrestlers will like make jokes about like kissing their cousin or stuff like that. I never did that because I didn't want to make fun of them.
Right.
So I tried to be, kind of like that's what they all wanted to be. They wanted to be the cool. I mean, I wasn't a cool hillbilly, but I was what they wanted to be, inspired.
Would it be safe to say that they tried to cartoon their hillbilly up, whereas you were actually more realistic?
Yeah.
That's that NWA piece also, that there's different types of hillbillies. I think when Hillbilly Jim started, it was legit, and then they used him later, but I don't know if he ever really became too cartoonish.
Yeah, Hillbilly Jim wasn't like that stereotypical hillbilly.
No.
I mean, he was naive and he wasn't the smartest guy, but he could be tricked by the nasty heels, but he wasn't stupid.
Right, and usually you couldn't fool him twice.
Yeah. I think Uncle Elmer, he was the more dumb, stereotypical hillbilly.
Yeah.
Of course, that didn't get over as well. So.
Yeah, he was definitely a short run. It was like he was huge there for a while. And then once he did the job to Adonis at WrestleMania 2, it was about time for old Plowboy Frazier to hit the road.
Yeah.
Getting back to the drop kick, we talk a lot on here about doing what you want to do versus doing what is needed. And so what I think has really made you successful is there's a lot of things you can do, but you choose to only do things that fit what you're trying to accomplish. And that way, when we see JT hit a drop kick or something, it means something. Do you think that current independent wrestlers have gotten away from that?
Yeah, and I understand it. Excuse me, because when like I started out and I was probably about 350 to 375 when I actually started wrestling, and there was a period where I got down to about 250, and that was probably my best period of wrestling. But I started I kind of lost the script. I started just wrestling to wrestle. And because I could do more moves, so I kind of got carried away. I started doing more moves. I started actually having more wrestling matches.
Okay.
And that wasn't what made me popular with the crowd. It didn't matter that I could do like a power bomb and then jump off the top ropes. That wasn't the crowd would rather see me do a stink face.
Yeah.
So I kind of got away with that, and then when I gained all that weight, when I got up to about 560 there for a while, that really taught me to work around that. And actually, I worked the crowd a lot better at my heaviest.
Yeah, I think I came in about that time. And talk about Bruce Pritchard talks about this. I've talked about this in recent podcasts. Some guys have great interests and then they come out and then, like Bruce Pritchard said, then the match starts and you realize it's over. You come out like when I first started, I knew I wasn't ready until I got a match with you. And then I knew that there were certain matches you had already planned for me until you felt like I knew I was improving when you basically said, we're going to call something in the ring. I'm done with trying to talk about it. And so I've always watched how you interact with guys, and being in the ring as you're coming out, it was just amazing. No matter what the size of the crowd was, they definitely connected with you. And it didn't matter if you did a little ha-ha or if you got serious. And definitely when you got serious, they were like, it's time to fight. We're not laughing with him either. Just to make that connection, that didn't happen overnight, right? I mean, that's you night after night trying to figure out psychology. Am I correct?
Yeah, working on, just kind of going, figuring out what people liked. Because in all actuality, I was kind of a bully at my heaviest. Because there's this big, huge guy pushing around like a 150 pound, 200 pound person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like rubbing my butt in their face, or I'm tickling their armpits, or, and the crowd still likes that. I remember that one of the matches I had with little RJ from back in the day, like one of his first matches. I had it. We had it at the school or the church. And I was pretty over in that match, and I was just throwing him around like crazy. And I remember coming back thinking, I was like, man, I'm kind of a jerk. There I am beating up this poor little guy in sweatpants and a sweatshirt. But they loved it.
I remember he tried a off the top high cross body on you, and he hit you and fell off.
Yeah, that was something that I learned really got the crowd. The crowd really enjoyed that every time I did it. That was something I learned in West Virginia.
Okay.
Because the guy, I was actually in a match with somebody, and I couldn't see because the sun was shining in my eyes, and because it was an outside show, and the guy jumped off the top ropes, and I didn't see him coming, so he just ran into me and fell down, and the crowd really popped for it, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to remember this.
Yeah.
I didn't see him, so I didn't bump.
You're absolutely right. You weren't going to move. You were like our Andre. You weren't going to move unless you wanted to be moved. And I know for me, it made me work twice as hard to understand working with big guys and understanding psychology. And, what people tend to forget when you're in the ring, if you're doing it right, it's not a walk in the park. And wrestling you, even though you take care of guys and stuff, it's not a walk in the park. You got to watch what you're doing because you bring it.
Yeah.
I've often walked out with bumps and bruises and other things, and the intent wasn't there to do that, but just having a physical match with a guy 3 times your size, it's going to happen. Speaking about how you work with guys, we had talked about this. I was sharing this in a previous podcast. In my opinion, in independent wrestling, some guys, and that could be in pros, some guys have set matches they'll only stick to and they won't do anything else. And then there's some guys who I feel were like you, because once again, I tried to learn from you coming up. And I know at one point we were talking and you kind of had different sets of things you wanted to accomplish. And depending who you were wrestling determined which one you were going to do until you felt that person was ready. Am I accurate in that type of observation?
Yeah. It's just kind of something I learned from all the guys above me and ahead of me and stuff. Hacksaw, he always pretty much did the same exact match. In fact, I was talking to, was it Victor?
Vanko, right?
Yeah, Vanko. And we were talking about our matches with Hacksaw, and they were the exact same match.
Okay.
So those, until you can really, and that's kind of what happens when if you don't wrestle like a bunch of different guys. But if you go out and you wrestle guys that you've never met before, this is like the first time ever meeting them, you kind of, you don't know what you're expecting, so you kind of want to protect yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody, like in WWF, you don't have to worry about that because everybody's professional and they've been around a long time, they know what they're doing. But believe it or not, sometimes in the independents, you run into people that don't really know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And they could be dangerous.
Yes, I totally agree. I want to kind of go down the list of who you've wrestled, a who's who, so to speak, and then I'm going to ask you to share a story that I always enjoy listening to you tell. But before we do, I want to take a quick break. This is the Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling of Tony James podcast. We'll be right back after this brief message. The talking's over. Thinking about it, put it to rest. It's time that you start. You start with yourself. You get in the right frame of mind, you get in shape, you get healthy. So where do you go for that? Southpaw Boxing Club. You go to Facebook, Southpaw Boxing Club Hilliard. You give them a call at 740-973-4869, or you hit them up at southpawboxingclub.com. Eric Asher and all the great trainers there at Southpaw are going to motivate you in a positive light. They're going to give you options, upgrades, and they're going to keep you where you need to be. I'm telling you right now, today is the first day of the rest of your life. Southpaw Boxing Club. Okay, we're back. This is the Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling, a Tony James podcast. If you catch me on Spotify, please click follow. If you're watching me on YouTube, because I'm starting to expand into video, please hit subscribe, leave a message, and kind of interact with us if you can, if you'd like to put your own lists down and your own comments. And as always, Facebook, Outlaw Tony James. You can find Outlaw Tony James on Instagram, but that's about all you're going to get. So if you're looking for the podcast, the Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling, the Tony James podcast, Spotify and YouTube are the 2 platforms you're going to want to look to. Getting back to JT, I'd like to talk real briefly, if I could. You've wrestled some big names, and I'm not talking like charity matches. You've like got in there and done your thing. And once again, I think it's important that people realize or know so they can realize that you weren't just some guy. I mean, you were, even though you may not have been on the big stage, as some people may define it, you were doing big things.
I didn't know if you knew or not, but I was going to get called to the big stage one time.
Well, tell us about that.
Well, I couldn't do it because I had diarrhea.
Okay. Well, that happens, JT. That happens. I appreciate your candor on that.
No problem.
Hey, so why don't you drop some names? This is a good place to name drop. Who have you wrestled?
I wrestled. The first one I ever wrestled was Hacksaw Jim Duggan. That was one of the first names I ever wrestled, and that was on my bucket list when I first started wrestling. So I kind of topped out pretty quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've wrestled him and tagged with him twice.
Okay.
So I've had a few good experiences. I've actually wrestled him. When I wrestled him, I was actually called the Cuban Assassin.
Oh, okay.
It was in West Virginia. I think it was Bridgeport, and Hacksaw was going to wrestle the Cuban Assassin that night, and the Cuban Assassin couldn't make it, so they just put me in some tights and a mask, and that was the first time I ever actually got to wrestle Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
I'll be darned.
What ended up happening, the tights were a little too big on me because they were my uncle's tights.
Okay.
So when Hacksaw had me in the corner doing the 10 punches on me, every time he hit me, my pants would fall down a little bit more. So then he went to whip me across the ring to the other corner, and I had to like shuffle across. And then Hacksaw went to do his 3-point stance, but he started laughing.
Ah.
And then, of course, he hit me with the 4-point stance clothesline. And normally he would and wave the flag around before he went to the back, but he just pretty much went to the back automatically. And I rolled out of the ring and doing my walk of shame. I had my pants pulled up, luckily. And I come around the corner, and my uncle's like, "Oh," he's like, "Bubby, you're in trouble." He's like, "You really effed up, Bubby. Hacksaw's pretty mad." I'm like, "Uh-oh." So then I go down, walk down the steps, down to the basement, and Hacksaw turns around, looks at me, and just starts laughing. He's like, "I've been wrestling for 25 years. That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen."
No, your uncle was
really. Oh yeah, that was a constant thing with my uncle ribbing me.
So you got Hacksaw, and then what did you go to? Who'd you go to?
Let's see. I was in a battle royal with Bull Buchanan.
Okay.
I think then that was the Dusty Rhodes match. Was after that.
And you had Dusty.
A few years later.
Did you ever wrestle your uncle?
Oh yeah, I wrestled him a lot. He was always fun because he wouldn't talk to me at all before the match. I'd be trying to be like, "Well, what's going on?" And he's like, "Well, I'll pin you." And I'd be going like, "Do you want to do this?" He'd be like, "I'll just pin you."
Okay.
So he wouldn't absolutely tell me nothing. One time he did tell me, he's like, "Now run into, we'll do a shoulder tackle." And he was like, "Now you run into me, you hit me as hard as you can. Just hit me as absolutely hard as you can." I was like, "Well, then I'm going to knock you on your butt." And he's like, "Oh, you think so, Bubby?" He's like, "I dare you.
Ooh.
I dare you to knock me on my butt." So I remember in that match, I ran off the ropes and I hit him as hard as I possibly could. Like I threw my whole body into it. And of course he didn't move at all. Didn't even shake a little bit. And the fact that I bounced off of him, started falling backwards, and the whole time he's going, "Don't you fall, don't you fall." And I ended up falling through the ropes and my feet catching on the second rope. So I was hanging upside down.
Oh, you've had a couple good ones.
Yeah, it was always fun wrestling him because you never knew what he was going to do. He actually wanted me to do it, but I never felt comfortable doing it. He would do a vertical splash where he would splash the guy's head.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about? like his knees would be around the head area, and it was terrifying when he did it to you.
Okay.
Because all you look up and you just see this big blue coming
Oh, all right.
from the overalls. And, of course, he would always do that when he would pin me. He would do that splash to me, and on his way getting up, he'd usually flick the bag a little bit, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
He was always doing stuff like that to me.
All right. Well, he was allowed to, right?
Oh, yeah. He put me up out of bed in the hotel rooms at night. I remember I about knocked myself out in the corner of a dresser one time. And he was laughing, just having a good old time.
Now, the guys that trained you, Crash Holly and Les Thatcher, did you ever have a match with them?
No. No, we never really got too far into matches at that place, those places. Crash's school was only open for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
But it was a very slow process there. Like, he really took his time.
Okay.
And kind of that way was with HWA too. It was a slow process. I think the trial by fire is a more effective way.
Okay.
Because I think I've always been kind of more of, I think it's better to go out there and just do it, you know?
Right.
I mean, you learn how to bump and all that stuff, but once you learn how to bump, then you start doing everything else, you know?
Yeah. I can see that. And I know some of the times that you've gave training sessions, it's, you gotta know how to bump before, if you can't bump, then how are we going to work with you?
Yeah.
So I definitely get that. And we know you've wrestled Sam Houston. And
I beat him twice.
That's right. And any other big names that you've had? I mean, that's a nice list. What you've got?
Al Snow. I've wrestled him a few times.
Oh, okay.
That was a lot of fun. I potatoed him and was scared afterwards.
Oh, I bet.
Because he looked at me with a pretty mean look. But
you have a tendency to do that, you know.
Well, I don't think I've never heard that before in my life.
Oh, okay, my bad.
He Al Snow wrestled him. Somehow I was putting him in wrestling moves and didn't even know it.
Oh.
So he would almost wrestle himself. I didn't even really need to be there.
So is the hype, you know, you watch a lot of his seminars and him talking about wrestling, so he can basically back it up.
Oh yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah, I like a lot of his instructional videos and just him talking about wrestling, because the bottom line is he's about psychology and getting yourself over more so than the moves.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun. And he was just listening to him and pretty much just give your body to him and you're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm. So you got to tell the Dusty Rhodes story.
Well, that's usually Chris Pruitt usually likes to steal the story, but I'm going to steal it back for once.
You might as well. He's not here, so the platform's yours.
I know it now if he listens. He's cussing right now. But so anyway, we showed up at that show. It was in West Virginia. It was a pretty big crowd. It was probably 2,000 or 3,000 people there. It was a Jeff Jarrett was on the card. Abyss. I think AJ Styles might even have been on it.
Wow, you were on a big card.
Yeah, but I didn't really know who AJ Styles was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, originally I was scheduled to wrestle Abyss, and so I'd been watching a lot of his shows, and Abyss is a great guy too. We hung out after the show. But I get up, and we get down to the show, and I walk up and I look at the card, and it's a Jugulator versus Abyss. So I'm like, what the heck? And he's going through the card, naming it at the pre-show meeting. And then he gets, and he's not saying my name. And I'm like, what, he forget to book me? And then he goes, and then we're going to have JT Hogg against Dusty Rhodes. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Not too many people can say that they've wrestled Dusty Rhodes, especially in the last 25 years,
That's right.
And, former multi-time world champion, probably one of the most popular guys in the business ever.
Yep.
And so right at that point, I was nervous. So everything got settled. And Dusty Rhodes was sitting over there with Jeff Jarrett, and they were all talking, and I was just kind of hovering around, being like, should I go up and talk to him now? Like, what do I do? Because I can admit it, I was pretty starstruck.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dusty Rhodes, he looks over, he notices me, and he's like, you're JT, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, come on over here. And he's like, so we're working each other tonight. You got anything special to do? And of course, I said what I was trained to say by Crash Holly. Whatever makes you look good, sir. I'm here to make you look good.
Mm.
And he liked that, I think. So he was like, okay, we're gonna lock up. I'm gonna push you off the ropes, Irish whip you. You come back at me, and I'll hit you with a Hanakarana. And I looked at him, and he goes, can you take a Hanakarana? And I was like, no, sir, I can't. He goes, good, because I can't give him. I think he knew to break the ice with me.
Awesome.
And, of course, then he would tell me, he'd be like, now, my knees don't work too good, so sometimes I just fall down. So if I fall down, you just go ahead and fall down too, okay? I was like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I was, that's what I was waiting to do. But we got out there, and I got hit with an atomic elbow before the other tag team came out and interrupted the match. So they ran out and interrupted the match. So technically, I have a disqualification victory over Dusty Rhodes.
There you go.
So I do have a victory over Dusty Rhodes. I should have probably put that on my shirt too.
Yeah, that you ought to have a checklist on your shirt. And
no beat me up.
And here's the thing, and I'll talk about this till I'm blue in the face, and I'm sure guys get tired of me talking about this because every time I get a chance, I do. At the end of the day, and this is my whole take on the indies, I know where the independent wrestling scene's going. It's been going there for the past couple of years. I've seen guys come in our old training center and all what they want to do versus what they don't want to do. Work ethic versus no work ethic. Just give me tights. I want to flip, flop, and fly. And some of them are very good at it. But they have to travel, I think. They have to travel to keep things over. Whereas I think if you get your character over and you get established, you don't have to travel. And right now, everybody wants to travel. What's your take on that? What do you think? You know what I'm talking about. We talk about it all the time. What's the big obstacle right now with current wrestlers?
Well, I guess if I could give a good example, I was on a show with Mr. Hughes, and there was the ring when we showed up. The ring was awful. It was one of the worst rings I've ever saw, and I was afraid it was going to break. And it didn't look real sturdy. It was kind of whopper-jawed. The first match was these three young guys, and they went out there and they just had like this epic long match where they were flipping and flopping and doing jumps the outside of the ring. Of course, this was in front of like 6-7 people. And they come to the back. The one kid collapses. They're all high-fiving each other and talking about how awesome it was. And Mr. Hughes goes, they were like, "What'd you think of our match?" And he was like, "It was pretty stupid." they're all taking it back. He's like, "How many people's out there? You're risking yourself for doing all that stuff in a broken ring when nobody cares."
Yeah.
Nobody's going to care about that match. And that's a lot of what wrestling is today. They do it more for people in the back.
Yeah.
They do it for the minority, not the majority.
Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem with the cool stuff they can do. There's some wrestlers I like that do that.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference though when Finn Balor does it and gets paid to do it. Well, when the only thing when I'm on a card and the guys before me aren't paying attention and they're either burning the crowd out or they don't know. I think there's a spot. There's a reason you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And just like in your match, you've got to tell a story and you've got to draw people in. I think you also got to set things up throughout the card too, because you don't want people leaving during the main event. You don't want to, like you said, do an epic the first match out, and then the fans are like, "Well, shoot, here's our expectation for the rest of the show." So when two guys do come out, and I get it, I've said this before, follow that, boys. And I say that. But I'm not out there overdoing it either where I'm disrespecting the next match. I'm doing something that I know the next match can do, and I'm saying follow that. So what do you think happened? At what point when did you think that? Because that's all we're getting. We're getting the same looking guy doing the same thing. When do you think that happened in wrestling?
I think the internet played a lot to it. Like, believe it or not, like Dave Meltzer's and the Dirt Sheets and all the internet websites. And my theory is, I have a pretty hot take.
Okay.
But my theory is Shawn Michaels ruined wrestling.
Ooh.
I know. A lot of people are gonna say that I'm crazy because he's the greatest in-ring performer of all time.
Right, that's what they say.
But in almost every measurable metric, he wasn't the greatest performer. He the ratings were just in the toilet when he was champion.
Mm-hmm.
They want to say he created DX. He may have created it, but it was X-Pac and Billy Gunn and Road Dogg that really took it off. And I think once Shawn Michaels, that style of wrestling is kind of that's what really dug it in there. And the generation of wrestlers now, he was like their favorite wrestlers.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's kind of, and I'm not saying, I don't think Shawn Michaels is an awful wrestler or anything. I just don't, I don't understand why everybody thinks he's the greatest.
Yeah, that's a good point, because normally, and everybody knows I'm a Hogan mark, normally they will list like 5 events that Hogan has done that has killed wrestling, like the tag match where Savage gave him an elbow to wake him up, the finger poke of doom, not putting Vader over, those types of things. They say that's when wrestling died. And I think I am with you. I think when the WWF said, "See you, Hogan, we're going real cartoonish, but we're going to go real cartoonish, but we're going to put this guy who thinks he's a sex fiend as our champ, and he's going to do all these things." Nobody talks about when right in the middle of the ring he breaks kayfabe on Vader
Yeah.
and throwing temper tantrums during matches and doing what he did throughout the 90s.
Refusing to drop titles.
Yeah. How does that not kill wrestling?
And, like, I would have been willing to, like, back off him a little bit, but then he did that thing with Hogan at SummerSlam.
Yeah. And then once again, it's Hogan's fault.
Yeah.
And then when you listen to the interviews, Hogan wanted to do the old Madison Square Garden method. We'll do 3. We each get one, and then the face at the end, the heel puts the face over, and you do it.
Yeah.
You do it in a cage. And Sean has admitted in interviews and stuff that he took liberties with the overselling, and Hogan didn't even think he was doing that. But in essence, he was. He actually admitted that he was trying to show him up by making fun of him. And you're right. What a missed opportunity. Yeah.
In a huge series of matches.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir here. You wouldn't be if you were talking to Jimmy Fahrenheit. We got into not deep, but we got into the Shawn Michaels view. And once again, I'm with you. I'm not saying he's crap. I loved Shawn Michaels when he was part of the Midnight Rockers. And then when they came in as a tag team, I expected them to have a long reign as tag champs, and I was disappointed when they didn't get it. I just thought when he went singles, it was just interesting. I watched a lot of his stuff, and the one match I will give him I do like is the SummerSlam ladder match where he's in his light blue tights, and he did some stuff in that match that hadn't been done before, and mad respect for that. But well, that's good. We've got a little just touching a little bit on the indie scene there. We're going to take a quick break, one last break here, and then we're going to come back and we are going to talk. We're going to get information from the man who's been on both sides, and he's going to give us his Mount Rushmore of heels and faces. We'll be right back. This is the Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling of Tony James podcast.
I'm proud to introduce here at the Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling of Tony James podcast our new sponsor. It's a new sponsor to the podcast, but I've been with this company for a very long time, Jose Sanchez Boots, since 1963. I haven't been with them since 63, but I've been with them since my wrestling career. Every pair of boots that I wear are handmade, custom made. These are not just boots. These are a lifestyle. There's history, the leather working, everything put into these boots means something. In fact, the only time I take these boots off, out of respect, is when I'm in the swimming pool. Anytime, anywhere else, I keep them on. They are that great. You really only need one pair, but after you get one, you need many more. When I step into the ring, when I step out, after the show, wherever I might be stepping, Jose Sanchez boots are on my feet. Check them out. Tell them Outlaw Tony James sent you.
We are back. This is the Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling of Tony James podcast. So we're going to get down to the nitty gritty now. You got a little teaser there before the break. It'll be interesting to see where JT puts Shawn Michaels, if he does. So JT, you definitely know how to be a heel with being when you turned and something got in your head, you went nutso and you became the Razorback. You freaked people out, you scared people, and then you've been the lovable hillbilly, the angry hillbilly, and now you became a hybrid when you were whooping on Sam Houston. And now, of course, what is old is new again. Everybody's glad that you've come back to the fold and they get to cheer you. You left us on November 12th with walking back to the curtain and feeling pretty good about yourself and the fans loving you. I'm going to assume that you're looking forward to getting your hands on Randy and moving forward.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind getting my hands on Randy, just to kind of keep pushing him because I just want the best for him, his family and all. But Kevin Pruitt's the one I want the most.
Okay, I'd like to see that.
I'd like to wipe his little cocky smile right off his face.
I think the PWA, if you're listening, PWA, I think we want to see a JT Hogg, Kevin Pruitt match for the title. Let's see if we can't get that done.
I would like to see that too.
Make some comments if you're on YouTube. Hit subscribe. Tell us if you want to see JT Hogg versus Kevin Pruitt for the PWA heavyweight title. With that being said, JT, you have to pick 4. Do you want to go heels first or faces first?
Let's go with faces.
All right. So you got to pick 4 faces that you feel are the all-time. This is it. You only get 4. Who are they?
I would have to go with The Rock.
Ooh.
Steve Austin.
Oh, my. Interesting.
Roddy Piper.
That's a face.
Yep.
Really?
And Hulk Hogan.
Wow.
I think those are some of the most popular guys in the business ever.
That almost, I'm going to be honest with you, if you take Roddy out, you've got the makings of the greatest Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Not just the face. Am I right? Who would you take if you took, I'm assuming you'd take Roddy out and put someone else in if I told you to pick the 4 greatest of all time.
Well, my own personal bias would probably put Goldberg in there.
Okay.
I'm a big Goldberg fan. But I don't think Brock Lesnar would be too far behind.
Okay.
Ric Flair wouldn't be too far behind.
You think Bruno Sammartino should be in the talk or should be on that Mount Rushmore of faces?
Yeah, that's not. He was so far before me. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to understand what he meant to the business.
Okay.
It's kind of. I was thinking this the other day. I was looking at the 4 pillars of AEW. The Jungle Boy Darby, the Little Kid, and MJF.
The Little Kid?
The Sammy Guevara.
Oh.
And I was looking at them and I was thinking to myself, I wonder if it's my bias that I'm a full-grown man now, that if I would have been 14 or 15, if I would have looked at those guys and thought they looked tough. Like, did the generation before me look at guys like Chris Jericho and think that they didn't look tough?
You know, that's a good concept there.
Because I look at like Jungle Boy and I don't think I would sweat him at all. Like, I would take Jungle Boy on in a shoot fight. And I think I'd be fine. Any of those guys really, like, they just don't look tough to me. And I know they are, but they just don't have that look of the guys that were on top when I was a kid.
Well, you know, that's an interesting statement you make there. People also have to remember this, because we were talking about this. I think I was talking about this with Bjorn and Jimmy. I'm a huge Finn Balor fan. When you look at Finn Balor, he looks ripped to shreds, but if you were to stand beside him, what is he? Maybe 6 foot, 170 pounds.
He's a pretty small guy.
Yeah, but he looks great. Those guys are the same. They look great, but if you really got up on them, they're average man size. They just have very little body fat. And I think nowadays there are less tough guys that you believe that are tough that are actually tough than back in the day. Like, I remember growing up watching Chris Jericho in the 90s. I never really considered him a tough guy, but I thought he was legit. I just liked his shtick. I liked what he did. Piper, even as an old guy, I believe Piper was a tough dude because he came out in blue trunks and boots and was like, let's get it on.
He broke your eyeballs out.
Yeah, just same thing with Ric Flair. Even if I didn't like him, Ric Flair, I thought he came off as, Iron Anderson. I wasn't an Iron Anderson fan, but I knew he looked like a tough guy. He looked like the guy who hung out with my uncle down at the bar, and you didn't mess with him.
Yeah, even Ric Flair, who was had the fluffy hair and all that stuff, he still looked like he could whoop you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jungle Boy doesn't look like he could whoop anybody.
Well, it's so they call them the four pillars of the company. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, that was the idea of the promo.
Okay, because I don't follow AEW too much. The good thing is they got rid of the Marco Stunt thing. That was hard to deal with. And I listened to Jim Cornette when he talks about their matches, and it sounds like you're getting the same thing over and over again. The one thing with MJF, has anybody noticed? He looked a certain way. He looked smooth. His body, now all of a sudden he's ripped and he's big, and he went away for a while. Now he's back. Unless you got a Hollywood trainer, which maybe he does, he looks totally different than when he started.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely a lot.
And nowadays, you can get anything you want over the counter. Nothing's illegal. And I'm not even knocking the guy if he went and got certain supplements to make his body look like that. I just find it interesting that everybody back in the day complained that you had to be a big man to wrestle and you had to have a certain look. And we got to break away from that. And you got to give us little guys a shot. Now everybody's got to have bikini briefs and 0% body fat. And you got to be able to do 3 twists off the top rope or we're not signing you.
Yeah.
And it's like an extreme. There's no happy middle where you find 2 guys who know how to do it right. They can make you believe. It's a shame that that's gone to the wayside.
Yeah, I'm not. I know everybody's going crazy for MJF right now, but he's like one of the greatest heels of all time.
Oh, geez. He doesn't have enough skin in the game.
I just want to remind everybody that Roddy Piper didn't have to cuss or say off-color things to get over as a heel.
Thank you, JT Hogg.
If you get that cheap heat, it's not the same.
And cheap heat doesn't last.
Yeah.
Just like a cheap pop. These guys that come out and swish their long hair around and yell at everybody, hey, it's so great to be in Cleveland. I love you. Woo! And then the match starts and people forget who you are and they want you to leave Cleveland. I'm the same way about the cheap heat, too. You're absolutely right. There's guys that can make you I'm not a big fan of the Russian Viktor Vanko, but he can get heat, and it's legit heat.
Yeah.
When you were a turd, I'll put it mildly, you got real heat. People didn't like you. They got tired of you, and they didn't like you. It wasn't cheap heat. You're so right. We're so quick now to put a title on somebody as the greatest or the best, and they don't even have 5 years in the business.
Yeah. I mean, I think he is a pretty decent heel.
Yeah.
But it's been so long since there's been a decent heel on the main stage that
you're right.
You're like, oh, this guy's the greatest.
Yeah, because nobody wants to do it. I want to move on to the next Mount Rushmore, but I do want to say this. I think the problem is, and this is across the board, I want to be a bad guy. I want to do bad things, but I want you to cheer me.
Yeah. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I want to come out and be rough and cheat in the ring, but I want to sign autographs and I want people to shower me with kisses and I want to walk out and let everybody know who I am. I don't think you can have it both ways.
Well, you can try. It just isn't going to.
No, it doesn't, because they don't know what, number one, they don't know what to do with you. And why would I want to come hang out with a guy who's acting douchey in the ring and now all of a sudden he wants to be my friend because he wants me to buy a $20 photo?
I think if you're going to be bad, you be bad.
Yeah, you're gonna be a jerk and own it. And then if you want redemption, do that later. If you want to be a real jerk, hang out with Kevin Pruitt.
That's right.
So now, who would you put on your Mount Rushmore of heels?
Well, honestly, I think The Rock, Stone Cold, Hulk Hogan, and Roddy Piper.
Oh my gosh, he pulled a double.
Because I think the thing that makes you a good heel or face also makes you a good face or a heel.
Interesting.
And I mean, can't argue that those guys weren't great heels too.
You're right.
You know?
You're right.
Roddy Piper was one of the best heels in the business, then became one of the biggest faces. Hulk Hogan, one of the biggest faces, became one of the biggest heels.
Yep.
The Rock was a face at first, not a very good face, but then they turned him heel and he became like one of the most entertaining heels of all time.
Which turned him face.
Yep. Eventually, he went heel again. He kind of got to that mythic status. Though.
Yeah, there's a point I think a guy gets to where you can do no wrong.
Yeah, and even when you're a heel, like the people may boo you a little bit, but they still want to see you. You know, Rick Flair kind of hit that.
Yes.
Hit that, and The Rock definitely did.
Yeah.
Austin, I thought he was a really good heel as Stunning Steve, and then when he came in, and he really didn't really turn face till way late in his face career.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We're going to have to meet again and talk actual wrestling because you had mentioned you were a Barry Windham fan, and I've been plugging Barry Windham when we talk about certain topics. In my mind, Barry Windham always pops up. My heels, I'm not going to give my Mount Rushmores, but if I did, Roddy'd be on my heel, and you know another guy that I think could be on both would be Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
He to be so loved and then to turn, and then in WrestleMania 6 to be able to turn back, and the crowd loved it. I just think Andre was another one. So it's an interesting take on top heels and faces. There's not much change because the guys know how to do it well. Well, JT, where can we find? Are you on social media anywhere?
Not really. You can find me on Facebook, but I don't update much on there.
Okay.
I'm kind of taking a moratorium from social media.
All right. Well, I do know this, that you can go to pwaohio.com on YouTube, and there's plenty of matches of JT doing what he's doing now. And then please go back and look up JT with Dusty Rhodes in the tag match. Do you know if the singles match with Dusty Rhodes is posted?
No, that one I think unfortunately has been lost to time.
So you don't even have a copy?
No.
Oh man.
I lost almost all my matches. For the first 4 or 5 years of my career on a hard drive a long time ago.
Well, I do know there's stuff out there, so you need to do a deep dive on JT Hogg because he's more than just that guy you want to boo or that guy you want to love when he comes out of the curtain. And guys in the back, if you work with JT, if you happen to be working on with a promotion on a card with him, you need to sit down and talk with him and pick his brain. Not a lot of that goes on anymore when I'm at shows. It's a shame. Guys, I believe overall, whether it be Sam Houston or guys we bring in, I know Dr. Tom was willing. They like it. They like to share because these guys, and I'm putting JT in that category, I think they're the essence of what pro wrestling's built on. And that's psychology, getting yourself over, what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And the only way we can keep this machine we call pro wrestling going, not acting, not acrobats, not, hey, that guy's hurt, take his tights off and put him on that guy, but actual characters you want to believe in, you got to talk to these guys. And that's why I'm glad I was able to get JT on the show today, because it's good to hear about the guys he's wrestled, what he's been doing, and his philosophy on certain things. And I definitely want to bring you back, JT, so we can dive deeper into styles of wrestling, so we can kind of get maybe your top 10 of guys who you think are at the top when it comes to wrestling overall. Any parting words for us, JT?
Well, I appreciate you having me on the show, and I would like to come back.
Absolutely. And I'd love to get you in here in person. If not, then I'd also like to, sometimes I do something which I call as a triple threat, where I get a couple guys in here and we kind of argue and hammer things out and try to figure out, just in our small circle, who knows more than the other. Just, so, being an older wrestler, it's kind of nice to act like we know something.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I'm sorry, JT, go ahead. I talked over you there.
I'll take on your anytime.
There's a match out there with you two, isn't there?
Yep, I beat him too.
You need to look that one up. It should be on the PWA site. With that being said, hey, we want to see JT Hogg versus Kevin Cruitt for the PWA heavyweight title. Speaking of the PWA, April 15th, Fairfield County Fairgrounds. Doors open at 6, bell time 7 if you want to catch PWA action. This, however, is the good, the bad, and the wrestling, a Tony James podcast. Hey, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. God is good, and we will see you at the matches.
JT, come on, buddy! JT, that's right. Hey, super heavyweights!
Hey. There you go.